Realities converge over on BBC2 in a moment. Lister's confused and Crichton's oh so jealous. Red Dwarf. On BBC1, the 9 o'clock news with Michael Buerk.
Britain's biggest television organisations have got together to bid for 15 new pay channels that'll use digital technology. What's a nurse worth? The row over reports public sector workers will be recommended rises above inflation. And an official apology over the dying prisoner who was chained to his bed. Good evening. The four largest television organisations in Britain, the satellite broadcaster Sky B, the ITV companies Carlton and Granada and the BBC, have got together to bid for 15 new subscription channels. They've become available because of digital technology, and viewers won't need satellite dishes to see them. Media correspondent Nick Hyam reports.
Dan and Amanda Radley are among the 5 million families who subscribe to cable or satellite television. They pay around £30 a month for 40 channels. Digital terrestrial television, probably costing slightly less, is aimed at the 16 million homes who've not so far subscribed to cable or satellite.
Our research tells us that a great many of those homes would be prepared to pay for more television if it was attractive programming that they wanted to watch, if it was easy to access, and if it was competitively priced.
Digital television from terrestrial or Earth-based transmitters can be received on existing aerials, though viewers will need to buy a special decoder to sit alongside their televisions. From next spring, they'll get the existing services of the BBC, ITV, Channel 4 and the new Channel 5, plus some extra free programmes, like a BBC News channel. Some services from existing broadcasters, perhaps a Channel 4 film channel, might eventually have to be paid for. Around 15 further pay TV channels, similar to those available on cable and satellite, are covered by the licence on offer today. The application from Britain's 4 biggest broadcasters is one of 2 main bids for the licence. Sky Television's involvement is significant. Sky's also planning 200 digital satellite channels later this year. It might have tried to kill off digital terrestrial television. Instead, it's joining in. Its main sports channel, showing Premier League matches, and 2 movie channels will be part of the new service.
UK's favourite radio station where we only play...
And there'll be a television equivalent of Radio 1 among 4 new BBC subscription channels. Some BBC channels may also be part of the second bidder's offering. That second bidder is backed by a cable TV company, International Cabletel. Its application promises films, minority sports coverage and education programmes, and new information services.
We have a wide array of quality programmes, including Hollywood movies, and a set of very interesting data services that are really going to bring the information society to Britain.
The group backed by Sky, Carlton and Granada looks a likely winner. It has the money, the experience and, crucially, the programmes needed to make digital terrestrial television a success. But it would also extend Sky's effective monopoly of pay television into a new area, and that may make the regulators think twice before awarding it the licence. Digital decoders will look like those for satellite TV. With subsidies, they'll cost only £200 or £300. Ultimately, digital receivers will be built into TV sets, which people renew every 10 years or so. One reason some experts think digital has a great future.
I think 10 years from the start of the service, we'll be looking at 50% of UK homes having some form of digital service, and 33%, that's about 7 million homes, having digital terrestrial only.
The Independent Television Commission will award the new licence in the spring. The new services should be on air next year. Nick Hyam, BBC News.
The Shadow Chancellor, Gordon Brown, has again made it clear that a Labour government would stick to current public spending limits, with no exceptions for public sector pay rises. Independent review bodies are reported to have recommended wage rises for some groups, like nurses and teachers, above inflation. John Major said the Cabinet would decide on the pay recommendations next week. Our political editor Robin Oakley reports.
Leaked details today of proposed inflation-busting pay awards for nurses, teachers and other public sector workers, together with reports the government was likely to stagger them over a period, gave a new focus to the election battle. Some Tories hoped Labour would be too embarrassed to deny the public sector unions, so getting its spending arithmetic around its ankles. But the Shadow Chancellor, at a small business conference, accused ministers of playing politics with pay and insisted his promised tough spending limits would not be bent.
Labour will take a firm and fair approach to public sector pay. Decisions will be made with a view to retain and to recruit and motivate staff. But these decisions must be made within tough cash limits. With Labour, all public sector pay agreements must be financed from within the agreed departmental cash limits, upon which departments must now plan.
Final decisions will await the pay review body's published reports. But that implies that under Labour too there might be job losses, service cuts and staggered pay increases. Liberal Democrats scorned the other party's obsession with what they called unrealistic tax cuts and spending curves.
It's quite unfair to say that people in the public sector should tighten their belts in order to finance tax cuts, which the government couldn't justify in the first place.
Arriving for the first of his promised press conferences to set out planks in the Tory manifesto, Mr Major said next week's cabinet would make the pay decisions. He's seeking to take the Tories back on the popular capitalism road. He's looking for wider share ownership, more workers' shares and more private pensions.
Our aim is for everyone to have a people's share in an enterprise economy. And by that I don't mean a centralised social stake exercised through government or some special interest group. I mean personal ownership and a personal share.
He plans inland revenue rule changes which would facilitate extra free shares for workers who invest in their companies, cheap personal pensions on a group basis for those in small firms, and portable pensions for the self-employed who move in and out of other jobs. A more positive note than of late from the Tories, dismissed by Mr Brown as uncosted promises. But the public sector pay battles are likely to go on whoever wins the election. Robin Oakley, BBC News, Westminster.
Tonight, the Public Service Union said their recommended pay rises should be paid in full, not in stages, whichever party is in power. The teachers and nurses said they were being used as human pawns on the general election chessboard. Social Affairs Editor Neil Dixon reports.
They won't be dancing on the wards of St Thomas's tonight, but there's some satisfaction that this year's pay award will be national and above inflation. Last time the review bodies added insult to injury by giving top doctors a much bigger rise. Only if this year's award is staged is there likely to be a similar outcry from nurses.
The nursing profession is very demoralised at the moment with chronic shortages and heavy workloads. So obviously we think that the money is there to pay nurses their pay reward now and not to be staged.
I feel that it doesn't reflect really what nurses should be getting, although it certainly is a great improvement and it's a great step forward and a positive step forward.
The health professions have been fighting a rearguard action against locally determined pay. Here at St Thomas's, unions and management did reach an agreement on last year's award, but most NHS trusts have still not settled. Now it seems as if the nurses' review body has ignored government pleas and reverted to a national award.
That means the review body is saying that local pay has not worked. In the last 2 years, trusts have meant to have local bargaining, but this time they're being told this is the increase.
For health service managers, though, the biggest headache could be trying to meet a bigger pay bill when hospitals are already under severe pressure.
If we have to pay these kind of awards, particularly if there was no phasing, there's no doubt that we'd have to look at the number of staff we employ. We'd also have to look at the number of services we provide.
And if the teachers also receive their award in full and it's not paid in stages, schools could also face some unpalatable choices. The unions say without more money to pay higher wages, children and teachers will suffer.
The cuts that the school has to make is to reduce the number of teachers. And by employing fewer teachers, you increase class size. So the loser is both the teacher and the pupil.
It's going to be a difficult year for the public services, but the story is a familiar one. Staff who say they're underpaid and undervalued, managers who say there's not enough money to go round, and politicians who say it's all the nation can afford. Neil Dixon, BBC News, at St Thomas's Hospital in London.
The Director General of the Prison Service has apologised to the family of a terminally ill remand prisoner who was chained to a bed until 3 hours before he died. 5 senior staff at Cardiff Prison, including the former Deputy Governor, are facing disciplinary action over the treatment of 25-year-old Geoffrey Thomas. Home Affairs correspondent John Silverman reports.
At the Marie Curie Cancer Centre in Cardiff, remand prisoner Geoffrey Thomas spent the last 3 days of his life shackled to a bed. Only after a bail application were the handcuffs removed, just 3 hours before he died. Today, his mother was given an unprecedented apology by the prison service, which said her son had been treated in an inconsiderate and inhumane way.
The loss of son, nothing could heal that. Nothing. I mean, the way they treated him, I hope to God nobody else will go through it.
2 years ago, it emerged that a pregnant prisoner at Holloway Jail had been handcuffed in a labour ward. The outcry led to a change in the rules. Now, fresh instructions are being issued. They make it clear that shackles must be removed to meet medical concerns.
It's always an extremely difficult balance to draw between security on the one side and compassion and humanity on the other. We clearly got it wrong in this case, and we have got to make much clearer to our staff what it is expected of them.
The inquiry into the escapes from Parkhurst Jail led to a general tightening of security. As a result, the number of escapes has fallen. But despite today's new instructions, critics say the policy is still draconian.
The problem is that there is an obsession with security within the prison service, and that is as a result of the climate which really has been created by the politicians.
The disciplinary inquiry at Cardiff Jail could lead to demotion of staff or fines, and the prison service may pay compensation to the family of Geoffrey Thomas. Balancing security with humanity is the hardest task facing the jail system, and once again its image is badly tarnished. John Silverman, BBC News at Prison Service Headquarters.
Police in Middlesbrough say that a new policy of zero tolerance has led to a 44% drop in the number of crimes. For 3 months, a team of detectives has been targeting burglars and other known criminals. They believe their success could be repeated across Britain. Paul Newman reports from Middlesbrough.
This security camera video illustrates the scale of the problem facing the police. In Middlesbrough, 60% of crimes are burglaries. In this incident, a gang smashed their way into a shopping centre before making off with a haul of clothing. It was over in just 55 seconds.
Be on the door, love. All right, 10 seconds.
For nearly 3 months now, a small team of detectives has been targeting burglars and other known criminals with dramatic effects. There were 600 fewer crimes in Middlesbrough this month compared to the same time last year.
And in this town, we tolerate very little. Our police officers interact, they become very assertive with people, and they confront the real issues. They confront the criminals on the street.
Been in trouble with the police before?
On the streets at night, anyone, even innocent bystanders like this man, is likely to be questioned. Officers on the beat call them stop checks, and there were more than 1,300 this month alone.
The criminals, they do know that we are out there and that we do mean business now. Yeah, we are out there to reclaim the streets.
But the new confrontational approach has angered civil liberty groups, who say the police are going too far.
The primary concern must be that surely resources should be being put into policing more serious crimes, rapes, child abuse, and violent crimes. And at the same time, zero tolerance policies as being carried out in Cleveland could have the potential of undermining community policing.
This high-profile style of policing has drawn strong support from the public, and there's also a recognition now among the criminal fraternity that their lives are going to be made increasingly difficult. The Home Office today welcomed the Cleveland strategy and said the Home Secretary was encouraging other chief constables to adopt zero tolerance where appropriate. Paul Newman, BBC News, Middlesbrough.
The insurance company Scottish Amicable has rejected a surprise £1.4 billion takeover bid from Abbey National. Scottish Amicable policyholders have been offered an immediate windfall of about £360 each if its offer were accepted. But Scottish Amicable has plans of its own to float on the stock market. The Home Office is to cut 1,200 jobs in its immigration department over the next 3 years. The cuts follow the introduction of a new computer system and are expected to be achieved through natural wastage and voluntary redundancies. The Motorcycle Industry Association says motorbikes should be allowed to use bus lanes during rush hours. It claims that it would be safer for riders and ease congestion, but there are worries that it may be dangerous for cyclists who are already allowed to use bus lanes. Major aid agencies are to meet in Washington this weekend to launch a new loan scheme to help people in extreme poverty. The project's organisers hope that the loans, known as microcredit, will enable 100 million of the world's poorest people to become self-sufficient by 2005. Our Foreign Affairs correspondent Emily Buchanan reports for the 9 o'clock news from the Palestinian enclave of Gaza in Israel, where one scheme has helped thousands of poor women start their own businesses.
The signs of deepening poverty are clearly visible on Gaza's streets. A flood of international aid has not offset the effects of the Israeli blockade on the economy. Soaring unemployment and falling wages have driven more women into becoming their family's sole breadwinner. In a male-dominated society, they're braving social taboos to sell their wares in the market. But if they need a loan to build their businesses, they're not taken seriously. This woman told us that a bank would never lend to her because she didn't have anyone to vouch for her. UN project officers are now experimenting with giving small loans to groups of the poorest women. They've been astonished at the results. 3,000 women like Wahda Abu Amer have become thriving entrepreneurs. After an initial loan of just £400, she manufactures baby clothes, supporting 13 people and even buying land with the profits, all in spite of her husband's disapproval.
He forbids me from taking loans. He says it's haram, against Islam. He says, I'll give you the money instead. But of course he never does.
The women religiously pay back the loans, anxious not to let down other members of the group. Repayment rates are over 100%, with many paying their instalments early. With interest rates as high as a commercial bank, the scheme is set to be self-sustainable by next year. Small-scale lending, or microcredit, has become the new ideology sweeping the aid business. In an era of shrinking aid budgets, with governments around the world reluctant to fund development or perpetuate dependence on aid, the idea of aid which makes people self-reliant is becoming increasingly attractive. But not everyone is a budding entrepreneur. Even those who are pioneering microcredit warn against seeing it as a substitute for traditional aid donations.
For many, the very poor, the disabled, there's no amount of microenterprise credit can do very much for them. Those people will still need traditional sources of aid intervention.
Each day, UN workers seek out those rejected by the rest of society. Giving them credit gives them a dignity they've never had before. The spread of microcredit could be the key to sustainable development, but aid agencies warn that without macro policies to help the underprivileged, it can't be the final answer to poverty. Emily Buchanan, BBC News, Gaza.
Here, a new video has been released to help judges make it easier for children to give evidence in abuse cases. The NSPCC, who produced the video, say it'll lead to fairer trials. The Home Office is currently considering a number of schemes to make court proceedings less intimidating for children. Here's our social affairs correspondent, Christine Stewart.
Child abuse victims can give evidence via a television link. It's now suggested that judges also use simple language, take regular breaks and adopt a friendly manner.
This is what I look like with the wig off. Which do you prefer?
It will enable the child to do justice to the case the child wants to present without being disadvantaged because it's tired or unfairly treated. That has an advantage for the defendant. Ultimately, what's going on in the trial process is a search for the truth.
The video is one step. The NSPCC wants to see more initiatives, like this witness scheme in Devon, which supports victims before the trial.
Someone would say, well, you're going to court next month, and it would get put off and put back on and put off. And it was frustrating, and it just dragged a lot.
Here in Plymouth, some child abuse cases were taking up to 2 years to get to court. In an attempt to reduce the waiting time, a fast-track system was introduced. The key to the scheme is that it has the cooperation of all the major agencies, social services, the police, the Crown Prosecution Service and the judiciary. Once a case is fast-tracked and a recorded statement made to police, the trial should start within 6 months.
It does work, yes. We need to go further. We need to speed those times up. But it is
a massive improvement on the old system that we used to work with.
This girl's case never got to court, but she wasn't told for 9 months. Fast-tracking should speed that up, but a balance has to be struck to always allow enough time for a thorough investigation, in fairness to both the victim and defendant. Christine Stewart, BBC News.
The judge in the civil trial of O.J. Simpson has dismissed a member of the jury and ordered an investigation into alleged jury tampering. The juror was dismissed for reportedly failing to disclose that her daughter worked for the Los Angeles County Prosecutor's Office, which charged Simpson with the murder of his wife Nicole and a friend. He was cleared by a court in 1995. The leaders of Israel and Switzerland have failed to reach agreement on plans to compensate the families of Holocaust victims. Relatives claim that millions of dollars of their assets, including gold, were stolen by the Nazis. But after the meeting at the World Economic Forum in Davos, the Swiss president says any compensation will have to wait until the outcome of an inquiry.
A short ride by helicopter brought the Israeli Prime Minister into the heart of the Swiss Alps. Benjamin Netanyahu came to Davos to press his case, but his efforts were in vain. The two sides are no nearer agreeing just how much money belonging to Jewish Holocaust victims remains in Swiss banks.
I understand that the numbers we're talking about are in the billions rather than millions of dollars. But I think that that is why a real, transparent, maybe even international body of inquiry should look into it.
At a Davos hotel, the Swiss told the Israelis it was too early to decide on setting up a compensation fund, an apparent reversal of last week's announcement.
In der Zusammensetzung dieser Kommission gezeigt.
Afterwards, Switzerland's president said all he wanted now was for a thorough inquiry to be completed. Calmly.
This very emotional discussion is a threat, is a danger for the process of finding the truth.
Switzerland's banks appear to have stamped on talk of compensation. They're happy to donate more money to a humanitarian fund, but nothing more. Families of Holocaust victims are unlikely to be appeased. They want to see a much firmer commitment from the Swiss.
I hate the idea of the Swiss keeping my father's money. It won't make me rich. But I want that as part of the inheritance from my father.
But in this alpine resort, hopes of a quick settlement have been dashed. This is now likely to be a long, drawn-out process. Months of negotiation are just beginning. Jonathan Charles, BBC News, Davos.
Leading politicians in Pakistan are making a last attempt to win support before Monday's general election. The campaign's been dominated by accusations of corruption, led by the former cricketer Imran Khan, whose party is committed to cleaning up Pakistan politics. Our Foreign Affairs editor John Simpson reports now for the 9 o'clock news on the final days of the campaign.
You know when Imran Khan is coming. Election leaflets bearing his famous name flutter down towards his next target on a tour of little towns and villages in the Punjab. The man himself is resting. The motion in the ancient Russian helicopter he's hired isn't pleasant. His advisors, like the man himself, are without political experience. Many have come back from abroad, filled, like him, with the vision of a new Pakistan. But it's the old Pakistan that greets Imran. Tabasar, for instance, is as poor a village as any in the country. These people have nothing whatever in common with the high-living, Oxford-educated, World Cup-winning cricketer, and yet he touches a nerve even here. The villagers of Tabasar come alight when he tells them how corrupt Pakistan's politics are. They've always suspected as much. In bigger places, too, they love it when, now in more romantic headgear, he tells them corrupt politicians should be hanged. He's only forecast to get around 10% of the national vote, but his impact is immense.
I would like to flatter myself, it's me. It's not that. It's because they're sick of these people. They realize that they have tried them over and over again, and they just keep coming back and being more and more corrupt.
Do you actually mean it when you say they ought to be executed?
Without any doubt. Unless and until we hang the corrupt people, it is impossible to eliminate corruption now.
You've had no government experience whatever.
You see, in Pakistan, you don't really need a genius here. All you need is integrity.
Another rally, another political atmosphere altogether. The Muslim League, last in power in '93, scents victory again. Its leader, Nawaz Sharif, has none of Imran Khan's charisma. He's quiet and stolid and technocratic, and last time round, the economy did rather well under him. Nawaz Sharif flies around in jets. His campaign's much better funded. Imran lumps him into his accusations of corruption.
This is absolutely false. These are the kind of charges that politicians usually level against each other, and we need to seriously consider how we can provide good governance, how can we provide a clean and honest image both inside Pakistan and outside Pakistan.
This year, Pakistan celebrates 50 years of independence. For exactly half that time, the military have ruled. The life expectancy of an elected civilian government is just 16 months. Yet the military won't want to take power openly again. Western governments nowadays dislike dealing with military regimes, and Pakistan wouldn't get the loans it needs. The military already has a share in power behind the scenes. That's enough for now. So the politicians will have the field to themselves for one more round at any rate. And this extraordinary system whereby one party or the other governs the country until it's thrown out for mismanagement could well continue. But so will the general perception here that the business of government is corrupt through and through. John Simpson, BBC News, Islamabad.
And the main news again tonight. Britain's 4 largest television organisations have teamed up to bid for the right to provide 15 new subscription channels. New digital technology means they'll be available without a satellite dish, although viewers will have to buy a decoder. Newsnight's on BBC 2 at 10:30, but that's all from the 9 o'clock news. Good night.
Good evening. There was fury in a London courtroom today when a youth was jailed for just 7 years for killing a 15-year-old girl. Police took so long to find the body of Joanne Edison that murder charges could not be brought. Instead, her killer was found guilty of the lesser charge of manslaughter.
There were emotional scenes outside the court this afternoon as Joanne Edison's family directed their fury at the police, who they say botched up the investigation. There was a furious outburst which spilled out onto the street outside the courtroom.
And this is what we're fighting for. She never got it today. Where is she? I tell you where she is. She's in her grave. And where is that scumbag sitting up there laughing at us? That is what he's doing.
Joanne Edison's parents were too distressed to say anything, but their solicitor read a statement on their behalf.
Liam Tovell is cunning, devious and a compulsive liar who, far from showing any remorse for the crime he had committed, actively took steps to conceal the body of our daughter Joanne in order to avoid the sentence of life he deserved for taking her life.
The schoolgirl went missing in May last year, but it took the British Transport Police 2 months to find her body, which was hidden under bushes and rubbish at the end of Tovell's next-door neighbour's garden. By then it was impossible to establish the cause of her death. No one from British Transport Police or the Metropolitan Force was available for comment, but they issued a joint statement saying they would conduct an internal investigation supervised by the Police Complaints Authority into the circumstances surrounding the discovery of the body of Joanne Edison. Joanne Coburn, Newsroom South East, Southwark Crown Court.
Thousands of motorists are being warned to brace themselves for a year of traffic chaos because of the closure of one of London's busiest bridges. Hammersmith in West London shuts down this weekend for 12 months of repairs.
Leaflets warning of the closure were being handed out to motorists today. Many will have to find alternative routes to work on Monday, and there are fears the confusion will lead to chaos in nearby roads, as it did during earlier weekend closures.
And it would take us an hour and a half to get just down to the junction leading up to Chiswick Bridge. We never bothered to go up towards Putney because Putney was also undergoing roadworks most of last year, and that was even worse.
The bridge is being closed for at least a year for essential repairs. These could cost anything up to £5 million. The bridge's suspension system wasn't designed for modern traffic flows, and it's in danger of being shaken apart.
We're getting ahead on the basis that money won't be a problem.
If and when it does become an issue later on, then we shall obviously be talking to whichever government's in power, saying this is a priority.
The bridge will only be open to buses, cyclists and pedestrians, but the government has asked Hammersmith and Fulham Council if it can allow some commercial traffic to continue to use it. Paul Curran, Newsroom South East at Hammersmith Bridge.
That's all from us this evening. So join us again tomorrow evening for all the news and sport here in the South East. Good evening.
Good evening. Well, a change in the month and a change in the weather, because at last I have a radar picture to show you with some rain on it. Here it is over western part of Ireland. It's only nudging very slowly eastwards. You can see how patchy it is to the southwest. Frontal systems are responsible for that rain. They're going to move steadily eastwards across the country, but I have to say in the south they're going to be pretty weak. Most of the rain-bearing cloud is going to be across northern areas, and the next vigorous weather system is going to affect mostly the north, the ridge of high pressure holding on to most southern areas for a good part of Monday. So for the rest of the evening and night, we'll have a good deal of cloud. Yes, still some spots of drizzle around these eastern areas, and one or two breaks in the cloud, allowing some mist and some fog patches. Also, one or two spots of rain eventually by the end of the night, getting in towards the southwest. Now, most places seeing temperatures above freezing overnight. Some clearer spells in Scotland, giving a touch of frost, and possibly a touch of frost later in the night in East Anglia, and over the next few hours too, across the northwestern part of Wales. But the wind is going to be quite strong in those southwestern areas, and I think during Saturday those stronger winds are going to extend their way northwards, really quite a fresh southerly across most northern parts of the British Isles throughout Saturday, and that's going to make it feel decidedly chilly. Temperatures in about 4 or 5 degrees, perhaps 7 in some more exposed islands on Saturday afternoon in the northwest. So Saturday starts off fairly cloudy with those mist patches. The rain in the west in towards Northern Ireland, pushing its way eastwards. Turn to snow, I think, over some of the higher parts, but not a lot of snow. The southeast, though, staying largely dry and becoming much brighter too, I think, across Northern Ireland in the afternoon. So for the important rugby matches in Cardiff, 1 or 2 spots of rain, but I think largely dry, and certainly dry through London, but here it will be quite chilly with that southeasterly breeze. On to Sunday, and a good deal of cloud to start the day with some spells of rain across many areas. Not too much rain in the southeast, although some rain will push southeast in the afternoon, followed by brighter weather across most northern and western areas. A few showers across Northern Ireland, but a fair number across Scotland. Some of those, I think, are going to turn wintry. That's it from me. Good night.
A whiter shade of pop on BBC 2 now. Mark Lamar's got his work cut out, but never mind the Buzzcocks.
Last time those girls met...
Do you know what happens when you're pregnant?
Now they're the best of chums.
I want to see one stretch mark.
As Ruby opens her tuck box...
I just want to stuff her until she's fat.
Before bunking off to the shops...
Anything you want up to 20 bucks.
A class reunion for Ruby Wax and Pamela Anderson. Monday at 10:10 on BBC1.
Who's more attractive, me or her? I'm more attractive. Well, there you go.
You know, that's cute.
An unforgettable half hour on BBC1. An evening of passion.
Would you care to come to the cinema with me on Monday?
Gosh.
A time for revelations and shocking home truths. Family tensions.
Are you fighting? You asking? I'm asking. I'm fighting. Come on now.
And high drama, where quality meets comedy. Harry Enfield and Chums, Tuesday at 9:30 on BBC1.
Hard living's beginning to show on Clint Eastwood tonight. If the booze don't get him, the tax man will, at 11:40. A tough film premiere first on BBC1. Kurt Russell may be new in town, but his reputation got there first. A famous voice sets the scene.